Welcome back to the Beast Game Podcast. This is going to be a review for a Amazon web series, which is The Man in the High Castle, Season 2. It stars Alexa Davos as Juliana Crane, Luke Cleantank as Joe Blake, Rufus Sewell as John Smith, Joe De La Fuente as Sergeant Keto, and Kerry Hiroyuki Tagawa as Finance Minister Tagami. And the synopsis is a glimpse into the alternate history of North America, what life after World War II would have been like if the Nazis and the Japanese had won the war. So, Keith, what is your viewpoint on The Man in the High Castle Season 2?
The biggest plus to this season was that it showed more of the Reich, the other side of things, as opposed to the first season kind of focused on the Pacific states. This one was focused more on the Reich. Joe Blake was over in Germany. A lot of political maneuvering over there, and Finance Minister Tagami, he traveled over to the other side, to our side, and you saw his family and what our world was like and his viewpoint of our world. The initial glimpse, you kind of thought the episodes didn't have like a real purpose or flow, that didn't flow into the whole main story, but it all came together the last two episodes, especially with the resistance and everything. So I like that they didn't follow the same formula that they did in the first season. They went to a completely separate formula, a continuation of it, and it was different and I enjoyed it. I thought the actors and the characters were fantastic.
I had some big issues with the middle of the season. I felt that those episodes just kind of dragged on. The Frank character was probably the weakest character this season because they made him just kind of whiny and one note. Frank seemed to be like too much of a handyman. Like he's good with machining, but then also he's good with making bombs.
Yeah, his disarming that bomb, I don't know how he thought that pumping water into phosphoric acid would diffuse the bomb, would be able to get, like, I'm like, how did he even think that would work?
It was just too written to make it work as far as the story is concerned, but the character never showed that during the first season. He is making replica guns, and then all of a sudden he's disarming bombs. I'm like, no, that doesn't work.
Yeah, but the guy's an artist, not a freaking like machine.
Yeah, I mean, then he's faking. Then he's faking artifacts and museum pieces. Wasn't really feeling the first 5 episodes. It starts to pick up maybe episode 6. So that's kind of where Joe is in Germany and he finds out essentially he's a super soldier.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
he's the real chosen person.
Then he goes on his little acid trip. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. I wish that episode 8 had happened earlier in the season because that's when things start to pick up. Episodes 5, 6, and 7 were the worst episodes of the series in general. And also, I wasn't feeling Joe's dad up until like the last 2 episodes. All right, well, let me just ask a couple of questions. So, how did you feel about Alexa Davalos?
I liked her this season more than I liked her in the first season. First season, like, she was just a drag, and I'm like, ditch this clown. But this second season, you kind of got, especially the 10th episode, the last episode, you finally got what it was she was trying to do. Like, she was completely trapped in this world and she was completely lost in what she would do with her life. All of a sudden her sister dies, gives her this film and says, this will change everything. This is what you're looking for. And she just followed it all the way through to get to some point to find out what it was that she was looking for, what it was her sister found.
I felt like I liked her character more during the first season and then also a little bit more during the dream sequence that Tagami goes through. She is okay. I liked her acting more during the first season. She was a more interesting character. But how did you feel about Luke Cleantank as Joe Blake?
I agree with you where he was kind of the weak link in this one. It felt like they were trying to make him a more sympathetic character. The fact that you find out his dad was this big higher up, I guess he was the number 2 guy in the Reich.
He was maybe about 3 or 4.
He was high up there in the Reich, and turns out he wasn't abandoned. He was a selective breeding project and stuff. So, and he got a little whiny about it, and it's kind of like, okay, like sounded like your mom was pissed, and that happens. Like, kind of get over yourself at that point. I did like the fact that he was loyal to his father, even when he knew his father. He was trying to convince his dad, and I liked his actual point of view. Showed that the Reich, that the young people, the future leaders of the Reich, were very progressive. They didn't believe in the master race thing. They didn't believe in all that. They were the chosen people. They believed in protecting the environment.
They were
very
hippies, more or
attitude.
less. They were German hippies.
And
they were all about free love and drugs and
yes, yeah, you're right. Actually, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. German hippies. That's exactly what it was. Shit. Yeah. I don't know why I didn't catch on that. All right. But I kind of enjoyed that.
Well, they kind of wrote his character out a lot in some of the early episodes because it does focus on Frank. It does focus on Ed, Mr. Chodan, and then Tagomi and like Kido for a lot of basically better part of 6 episodes. So I did like the relationship that he had with his father. Joe's problem is that he's being manipulated from every side. He's being manipulated by Juliana. He's being manipulated by John Smith, and he's being manipulated by his father. So he has his own ideals, but he seems to sway with whomever he has a close relationship to at the time. Aside from that acid trip episode, I just really didn't understand his character. I thought there would be a little bit more redemption for him as the season went along, and there really was not. I mean, he does help John Smith convince his father not to go to war, and then there's the next scene that he's basically about to go set off a nuke to destroy Japan.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about Rufus Sewell as John Smith?
He was the strongest. His point of view and his storyline had the most. It had everything. It had everything. In fact, if Man in the High Castle focused on him, I think the show would probably be a lot stronger. All of his motivations, despite the fact that he's in a seat of power, the head of the SS for the United States, his whole thing is about his family and protecting his family. If it was just him on the Reich side and it was Tagomi on the Pacific State side, and if it was just those two, I think the show would be a lot stronger.
I felt that his character also took a step back. He gets some redemption towards the end of the season, but he was a better written character in the first season. So,
you think so?
Yes. He was a more insidious character in the first season.
I think this one you just kind of got a better understanding because in the first season you didn't know he was going to be a complete bastard even to his family, but in this one you saw what he was doing for his family.
So let's talk about Joel De La Fuente as Sergeant Kido. So how did you feel about him?
I was a little more sympathetic to him, but I still thought he was a piece of trash and he needed to die.
He almost
root for Joe,
Say he almost did.
Frank got him once in the chest, but I'm like, that dude still survived. This guy's like a cockroach. I had a little more sympathy for him, the fact that his family and he was doing everything for the Empire and it wasn't personal what he was doing. His death is long overdue.
His character's redemption is only because of General Onata. He does an okay job this season. So it was like dealing with the Yakuza. That works out well. So that whole angle with Mr. Chodan and Ed working with the Yakuza and then the Kempeitai turning on the Yakuza because they have a long-standing beef. I like that.
That's pretty vicious.
Yeah, I like that thread, but I think his character was more integral into the story the first season, but he comes on slightly late in the season. Very slightly late. And it was mostly maybe episode 7 on where he gets some screen time. Let's talk about Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa as Shang Tsung.
Yeah. His character, I thought the first season was a little more kind of mystical. I want peace and harmony for everyone. And he was kind of touching and poking into different aspects of he was kind of playing both sides and everything. This one, when he kind of travels over there, I like that they didn't explain how that was done. He emerged next to his wife, who is, you don't know in the first season, but his wife and son are dead in his world. He travels over there and they're both alive, but they hate him.
He's an ardent Japanese person that doesn't like living in America. Mm-hmm. And that kind of goes against the values of his wife and his son.
Exactly. And they're living there now, and he goes back for his own personal reasons, to see his wife again. And he sees his son who's still alive. What's more, he sees that his son has a child and he's married. And kind of like the big shocker was that he sees Juliana there as well.
And Juliana becomes his
daughter-in-law. It turns out it's his daughter-in-law there, and it's kind of like he's blown by the connection, but more so he's more like, you can see that the reason he's like that in the first season was that he's an extremely lonely man missing his family, but he's achieved this status, such a status, and that he's literally a friend to the imperial family in Japan. and he's one of the leaders over here in the New World. And he's kind of like, he gets over there and he sees that he's this guy living some suburban house life. Wife hates him and wants to divorce him. His son just doesn't like him. And you read more into it, but when he gets there, he's like a guy who's like, he's not going to sit there trying to explain it. He's not looking around going, what's going on? What's going on? He's like, oh, I see everything I've ever wanted right here. I want to learn more about it. I want to embrace what I see right here. And he kind of exists and kind of goes through it and just kind of lets things play out. When his art came in, we cut over to his point of view, his perspective. I like that.
I just had a lot of issues with it because maybe for about 3 episodes, and the bulk of 3 episodes, it was his character. Obviously, the alternate reality for him is 1960s standard, what you know would be in the history books. Understanding that, hey, well, the world doesn't have to be messed up. The world doesn't have to be at war. People can come together because there's a issue with Russia and the United States. And it's like, well, hey,
Cuban Missile Crisis, yeah.
Yeah. So they got over their issues, and it's like, oh, well, they worked everything out. But he's a person without time, so he is in a world that he can't really have because whatever happened with his character in that reality, he can't be happy. And he can't be happy in his reality.
Yeah, see, that's where, and see that I think that's where you missed it. Like, so Juliana says in that episode, like when the last time she saw his character, he was on a bridge and the fog kind of swallowed him up and he was gone. And she said she thought she would never see him again, that he was going to jump and he would never see him again. And
yeah,
it's kind of inferred that his character killed himself.
Well, he does kind of get some redemption because he rebuilds a cup that he destroyed and then also gets to hold his grandson.
You're saying like that he can't stay. He actually could stay there. I mean, he literally could stay there and take on that life and live that life.
But it's not the life that he wants to have because he wants his wife and son being a family. But he can't be a family with them because they don't want to have anything to do with him. So.
Well, not towards the end. Like when he finally got the hold of his son, they were cutting to reconcile with him again. He was on the road to reconciliation with all of them. He had duty. He had a responsibility back in his own world. But in truth, he could go back there and stay there. He could have just stayed there forever.
So, Keith, what score would you give The Man in the High Castle?
I give it a 7.5. I would have given it the same score as the first season, but I felt that first season got a lot of points for being original and having that originality work for it. This season, like there was a few missteps and stumbles, but I give it a 7 all the same because those last 2 episodes really picked up and brought the whole story together.
I agree. So for me, I would have given the first season maybe an 8.5. The first 3 episodes of the first season were slow, but then it picks up. This season, maybe about 7 episodes were slow. Episodes 8, 9, and 10 were the show that I want. And where that show goes from here is the show that I want to see because John Smith stops the total obliteration of the world. And then Juliana Crane figures out that she can travel between worlds or at least see her sister again. It'll be interesting to see what happens with season 3. Maybe Joe takes a little bit more darker turn and he's not just like, hey, I'm just a nice guy, just trying to do the right thing and trying to stay out of the way. But I give this season a 7. That's the Beast Game Podcast. You can find more of our podcasts at beastgame.com, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Twitter, and YouTube.